we're back with another segment of Whet Your Palate. We've got a special guest today. We've got Jack Carr. He is an award-winning author. He also has served this nation as a Navy SEAL. Great stories, great career.
Well, I appreciate that, but I think I have to go back. You made me think. I don't think I've ever won an award. I don't think being like the guest of honor or the featured guest somewhere is winning an award. So, and I don't think these are award-winning books, meaning, they're number one New York Times bestsellers, but oftentimes that's different than what wins an Oscar. You know what I mean? It's like the Oscar is like, yeah, nobody saw this film, but it's wonderful type of a thing. Like, okay, the Marvel movies or the Bond or the Bourne or whatever else, Mission Impossible or, all those sorts of things. So I think these are the books. I thought about it once. I talked to my publicist about it, and I thought, what did Paul Newman eventually win an award for? Does anybody know? It's The Color of Money. And that's after The Sting, Butch Cassidy, The Sundance Kid, like all those amazing films that he was in, and he gets the Academy Award for The Color of Money. And so I was, I'm going to be very proud if I never win an award, but continue to crush in sales. And that's, for me, that's much more important, is have people out there reading these books, and then hopefully reading books, maybe for the first time, creating new readers, and then going on to other books as well, and leading fuller lives because of it. So
well said.
Just didn't want anyone saying that, he was introduced as being an award-winning author when he's never won anything.
I looked at New York Times bestseller as an award, I guess. Yeah.
All right, I'll go with
maybe
that.
Not. Maybe not. I am with you on the fact that we don't want the awards, we don't want the scores, we don't want the sums. We want to win with the American public. That is what we do in wine. It sounds like that's what you're doing with your books.
Yeah, and writing with your
win
heart.
The crowd. Remember from Gladiator how important that was? Win the crowd. Yeah.
Win the crowd. That's it.
Are you not entertained? So did we just miss you? You were just recently in Napa Valley?
Just there, 25th wedding anniversary, and it's been a few years since we've been out there, but we have such great memories of being there. We take kind of weekends up there in the SEAL teams, my wife and I, and spend some time just exploring, and just love Napa Valley, love St. Helena in particular. I had some family up there, and so we just love it, and so got married up there. I remember it was pre-September 11th. It was 2000, so my buddies were caring from the SEAL teams were carrying it, and it was before the microbrew stuff kind of got really big,
Oh, yeah.
And it was 2000, so Guinness was the big drink in the SEAL teams at the time. So into the winery, the guys are carrying all these cases of Guinness, so there would be enough for them at the wedding. So we did that. We had an amazing time, but we were just out there and driving around, and we had such great memories out there. I wouldn't be surprised if things continue to go the way they are. And of course, everything can go off the rails at any moment for any reason. But I think we'd probably get a place out there at some point. We just love it. I know most people are leaving California, but that's such a special place, and we have such great memories there. So we had a wonderful time, and I got this right here. Thank you guys. I wanted to ask you about this other stuff that you guys sent as well. But this in particular, I opened this up minutes ago, and we just had that. We just drank this in the house, and this is your wine, and but we just had this in the house, and we had it at a restaurant. So I think we had it at a restaurant first, and then we came back, and my wife got it somewhere, and so we had this at the house as well because it's so distinctive. She recognized this right away, and so
that's awesome.
And an amazing wine, and we just we love the Pinots now. Years ago, we were all into the heavy cabs and everything. Yeah. And I don't know if you just get older, things changes or what. I don't know how that works exactly, but now we're just more into the Pinots and save the cabs for the part of a pairing at a restaurant when that's all set up for you. But I think awesome.
Pinot's got a little bit of a lighter profile, but it's still got a ton of character to it, and it goes well with a broad array of foods. And that's kind of where I leaned in, started my career. So really glad you enjoyed it. Love to hear that you got married out here and you enjoy Napa Valley. Whenever you guys come out, whether it's you, your wife, your family, friends, give us a call. We'd love to show you around, get you a real experience at a winery. We're not corporate, so we can do things that other places really shy away from. And it really makes for a great experience. So we'd love to host you sometime. So the invitation is always open. And if you do buy a place out here, my one recommendation is don't start a business in California. Just vacation home cool, business bad.
And congratulations on 25 years of marriage too.
Yeah.
By the way, for sure.
Thank
It's beautiful.
Thank you. The wine helps with all that, of course.
Yeah.
That's really helped us get here. But yeah, man, we love it out there. We did did a tour, but it was kind of gosh, we went on actually 4th of July weekend, which we thought, I probably shouldn't even talk about this because we thought it was going to, but we thought it was gonna be too packed, but that was just like where we had the time and the schedule to do it. And so we got out there and it was amazing. It's like everyone for 4th of July kind of went other places. And it was just such a wonderful time to be up there in St. Helena. And we did went to a bunch of different wineries, all had such different character, brought back a ton of wine as well. Because we had to cancel all our wine clubs a couple of years ago. Well, I guess it's been almost a decade now since we moved out to Park City in Utah, and it just they can't deliver out here, so I had to cancel all those. Luckily, we had a lot to see us through. But yeah,
I'll tell you a little bit of the backstory on why Napa Valley was vacant during 4th of July. And great timing for you to come out. This is the first 4th of July in my lifetime that I remember that I did not see a single firework. Now, number one, they're not allowing us at least in this area of California with all the wildfires, and understandably so, to be able to just light off your own fireworks. They're totally inaccessible. Now it's a major crime if you do, even if you don't start a wildfire. But there was a huge warehouse fire where the majority of the Northern California fireworks were being stored in the Central Valley. Blew up. There were casualties. Sad story. And it wasn't even an authorized location for fireworks to be stored. But it pretty much depleted the inventory of fireworks just days before the 4th of July. So most people were like, well, we're not doing any celebrations, like community celebrations, which is really a sad thing in itself when those go away. Because fireworks show for each town here in Napa Valley, it does bring everybody together, and you want to see more of that, not less of it. So that kind of dissipating, I think, just had everybody go some other location. It was an odd 4th of July, but it definitely made it no traffic. Everything was open, and there were highlights in it. I mean, I would love to know, do you have any favorite like restaurants in the moment that you guys went to when you were here?
Yes, we do. Gosh, I mean, anyway, yes, I'll go back to that. But we went to Calistoga also, and they had an amazing parade. It was so cool.
Yeah.
So like just down home, small town America, like that was incredible. Stayed at the Auberge, so they had the Mercedes like AMG like fleet up there that you could just take, and it was like the most easiest rental car ever. You just like walk in, you sign your name, don't even read the thing, and then zip off in an AMG Mercedes. So we did that a little bit. We hired a car for taking us around to the wineries one day and set those up ahead of time, but no crowds to deal with when we did that. It was amazing. We did have it's interesting. I don't know if we should edit this out or not, but we were really excited to go to because we've been there years ago and had such an amazing time out at and so we went back one night and man, it was kind of boring.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I feel bad saying that, but it was like you walked in and it was like no one seemed like they wanted to be there. Like all the staff, and it wasn't like just one person, because for some reason they had a different person bring your meal. I mean, you go to Napa Valley, for those listening or whatever, it's like a culinary and wine experience, and it's like part of it. So I guess it sounds a little snooty when you're talking about this, but that's part of why you go to experience all that stuff. And we'd been there years ago, and someone had gifted us. It was before I published a book, and so we didn't have any money, and so someone gave us Ann Colgan a really nice bottle of Colgan, and so we took that in with us and just had an amazing meal there, and it was happy, and the music was great, the whole thing. And we went back, and it was like the opposite. I don't know what happened, if it changed or got bought out or something. I have no idea. But you had a different waiter or person come by to deliver each course, so you never got to know somebody kind of after that experience, which I thought was a little odd. And then the music was a total downer. We were sitting there, we're like, this is not what we remember. It was kind of weird. So anyway, maybe that was just the night we were there.
Well, I do know that a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago, they kind of overhauled the whole thing, and I really, living in Napa Valley, it's funny, you don't go out to the really fancy restaurants, like one of the kind of top restaurants that's got a Michelin star. But living here, you kind of avoid those. But when you come as a tourist, it's an absolute to do, right? You want to see these culinary experiences that are, unlike any other in the world, right? And just be wowed by it, and it's part of the culture, and really a cool experience. So glad you got to do it. But yeah, I every restaurant has their thing, and management really, they can make it or break it. So I'll have to go to and be the judge there too.
Yeah, check it out. But they also just handed the iPad over for the wine selection. It was like, here's the iPad. And it's kind of like, okay, I work all day on my phone and computer. Do people really want to go to like a top restaurant, pay these prices, have someone recommend what to pair with each course, like take those recommendations because this is the expert type thing, but instead just get handed like the iPad to go through, like you're scrolling on your normal doom scroll? It was kind of like, no, it's I don't know. Anyway,
I'm with you on that.
I'm too.
I also think that I've had some. And I don't know if it's like maybe we just need like a revamp in service education. Because I had an incident too where I was like downtown recently at a new restaurant in Napa, and it was kind of like I kind of experienced the same thing because I spent a lot of time in hospitality, and like you're saying, with a different server coming up every time. I was taught like your table was like your table in the places that I worked, and they were very kind of like upscale, and service was held to a very the highest tier. And so in those situations, you want someone to come up there and kind of intro and be like, here I am, I'm Chris, and I'm going to be taking care of you tonight. And that's your person.
Yeah.
You're like, I know, I got someone watching out for me, looking out for me. It's going to guide me through this journey of food, like a wine list and stuff.
Look, and I don't think that that's just our generation that's having that feeling. I think the younger generation is starting to come around to it too, because you get so numb to the ease of access to information of everywhere along the spectrum. And now people are going back to like, I want something tactile. I want to have an actual conversation with a real person.
Can we go back to that?
Right? I mean, that
books.
like,
everybody get hardcover books. We're an analog.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. We looked around the restaurant, so they set us in a seat where we could see everything, which I really did, which I liked. And we get to watch everyone else, and everyone there was also not having fun. It was a whole restaurant of people, and it was full. Not packed, but it was full. There was no, and it was not. Everyone was having fun. So let me juxtapose this to the next night where they did it right. And so we got French Laundry. Luckily, we know somebody who knows Thomas Keller and got us in like the day before. So we went in, and it's a 3-hour experience at French Laundry. We'd never been there before. I've been reading about it my whole life. I put it in one of my books. I put mustards in one of the last ones as well. Put a few different things I have some scenes that take place in St. Helena in the last book. Some of the bad guys having a place up there. But we go to French Laundry. And man, exact opposite. It was amazing. I mean, everyone in there was having the best time. We got to know the other people around us. Everyone's smiling. It's incredible ambiance. I mean, it was just so great. We even had Thomas Keller there on a Saturday night in the kitchen, and comes out. He signed our signed our.
That's awesome.
Oh heck yeah.
Did the full-on pairings. They have our names up at the top, happy anniversary type, thing up there. And it was so good and spaced out so perfectly. Like I said, everyone having fun. Great. I mean, it was incredible. And here's the wine list I just wanted to show you guys too. So we did this incredible pairing.
Yeah.
And, they print them out for you, send it. They sent us with all these gifts when we left, sent us with a bottle of champagne with our names on it and the date. But this was like an incredible pairing.
Yeah.
And you work with them on it as you go through. And I was just like, hey, if it was your 25th wedding anniversary, do what you would do. Obviously with a couple of limits. I was like, I don't want the $100,000 bottle of wine, but do what you would do if you were us, 25 years coming back here. And I said, try to work a Colgan in there because we really do like a Colgan cab. And so he did an incredible job with this. They took us back into the kitchen, got to meet everybody, and it was so much fun, not just for us, but for everyone in that restaurant. So that was, and it was a totally different experience than the night before. So it's we'll be going back for sure.
Well, that's a ringing endorsement. So that's awesome to hear. It is quite a special place. So well, very cool. Love to hear that.
Heck yeah.
Well, I think let's jump into the introduction.
Yeah, dude. Let's get into it.
So we got a special guest today. We got Jack Carr on our podcast, Go With Your Palate.
Yes.
Where we talk about wine, entrepreneurship, and whatever else we want to chat about. And I think there's going to be a lot of entrepreneurship and whatever else today, because you've got such a story. You've lived such a life. Can't wait to share that with our audience. But what we want people to take away from podcasts like this is, how should you live your life? How could you look at it from a different lens and become a better version of yourself? And so I think that this is going to be a very special podcast today, where that stuff comes out and just gives another perspective on what motivates people, what drives them, and how do they become successful and get away from kind of like the monotony and BS that's out there, because there's so much of it right now. And so welcome to the podcast, Jack. Thank you for being on.
No, thanks for having me. This is, that's what I think about every day, trying to be a better author today than I was yesterday, a better husband, a better father, a better citizen. In the SEAL teams, it was all about being a better leader and a better operator today than I was the day before. And that's just how I've tried to live my life. I haven't always been successful at that, but that's always the goal, and for the next book to be better than the one that I just wrote. So that's always a goal every day in life. So it's something I think about a lot. So I'm glad you talk about that sort of thing on this podcast.
Yeah. 4 steps forward, 1 step back. That's the way it always goes, right? I don't know about who's doing 2 steps forward anymore, but I like to think 4 or 5. That's the way to go.
Yeah. On the entrepreneurial side of the house, like, I didn't really realize how much of an entrepreneurial venture writing was going to be as I stepped out of the military. And what I did was look at publishing the same way I looked at the battlefield in Iraq and Afghanistan, because I have no degrees in business or anything like that. I have no previous work experience that would prepare me to start up a business. I didn't look at writing as a business. I still don't. I look at writing as a profession. It's like similar to the military in that it's the profession of arms, not the career of arms. And I think there's a differentiation there when you look at something as a career versus a profession. Precision in language being precision in thought, after all. But as I got closer to publication date of my first novel, I was looking at the landscape. And just like in Afghanistan or Iraq, you're looking at the enemy, you're trying to anticipate their next moves, you're trying to think, okay, this enemy's always adapting to me, I need to be always adapting to that enemy. What do they think my next move's going to be? And then so how do I jump over that and move to the next one so I can do things faster than my enemy, because who adapts quicker is usually going to end up on top. How do I capitalize on any momentum I might have? What gaps are there in the enemy's defenses? And so I looked at publishing, and it was really, they had not evolved that much because they are a gigantic industry, and they move along like kind of at the speed of an aircraft carrier type of a thing. And it takes a long time to move an aircraft carrier. And publishing is done okay. They were slow to adapt to ebooks, slow to adapt to audiobook. Audio is one of the fastest growing segment of publishing. But I looked at it and I thought, okay, what can I do today that an author couldn't have done in 1985, 95? And this was hard for me because part of the allure back when I was, let's say 10, 11, 12, of wanting to be an author one day is that I could write from a cabin in the mountains, send a manuscript to New York, do an interview, and then go back to writing. By nature, I am very introverted and shy, and I would prefer to just be up in the mountains alone. That was part of the draw of being an author for me. I think I had to teach myself to be a little more extroverted in the military, just to be heard in the SEAL teams. But as I crept up on that publication date in 2018, I realized that it's a new landscape. And now, let's say in the 80s, what are you competing with as an author? Well, a movie that's coming out that someone wants to see, and they have to wait till 7:15 on a Friday or Saturday night, or 9:30 if they stay up late on a Friday or Saturday night to actually go to a movie. You're competing with maybe the 6 o'clock news. You're then competing with a TV show at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, or 10 o'clock that you have to wait for. And maybe a video game, but you can only play Atari 2600 or the first Segas and Nintendos for only, you can't play them for days on end.
Well, some of us can.
Well, I mean, you can now, but back then, Atari you weren't playing Combat and Pitfall for days. You're going to finish that game pretty quick, and you have to get outside, or you can read. So back then authors weren't competing with the most powerful companies in the history of the world, whose their goal is to keep you addicted to a screen in your pocket. That they're not encouraging you to read. They're not encouraging you to put down that phone and pick up a long form book and dive into a story. They want the exact opposite of what fiction does, which is teach you, really, if you know it or not, to experience the world through someone else's eyes, which really leads to empathy and compassion in your own. And they don't want that. They want the exact. They're feeding you essentially things that do the exact opposite of that. So now you're in competition with that. Every TV show or movie that has ever been created, available at any second in time on multiple devices close by you at any given time. Every single social media app. You're in competition with all of these things, and so I thought, okay, that's the landscape. So if I'm going to enter that landscape, how do I essentially use it to my advantage? How do I use these platforms in a positive way to convert people into being readers? And so I looked at that and thought, okay, I'm going to have to do a lot more than I thought back when I was 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. I'm going to have a social media presence. I'm going to have to engage on these channels. I'm going to have a podcast. I'm going to have a blog. I'm going to have a website that's going to get updated. I'm going to have to stay engaged. All of these things that authors didn't have to contend with back in the day. And the ones that grew their audiences back then, they still don't have to. Let's say if you're a Stephen King or a James Patterson or somebody like that who built up a readership back in the 70s in Stephen King's case, but all the way through the 80s, 90s, even into early 2000s, if you built up that readership then, you still have a lot of them. But they're getting older. And so how do you get these younger readers engaged? And so that's what I've been trying to do the last few years. So that's been very entrepreneurial in nature. So having a merchandise line, sharing this journey, trying to provide something of value every day to people that follow me online. And so that takes a lot more effort than I would have anticipated at the outset. So it's just about point being, entrepreneurial in nature is really how I looked at it. Like, I'm making a computer in 1977 in my garage. I have to build the product. I have to let people know it exists, why they need it. I'm the CEO, the CFO, the CMO. If there was social media back then, I'd be the social media manager. And you have to do all of those things as a single person, essentially, as an entrepreneur out of the gate. And then you can start to move. Let's say you've created this computer, now you hired someone else that can do that can follow your instructions and build the thing. And now you have to figure out how to create more products or reach other markets and that sort of a thing. So you have to turn this entrepreneurial venture into more of a business with structure that allows you to grow to scale. And so it's very similar in writing, which was something I did not anticipate at the outset. I think most people just expect their publisher to market their book and to do everything for them. And that was the case in the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, but it is certainly not the case anymore unless you're an outlier with something like a 50 Shades of Grey or a Twilight or something like that. There's always going to be outliers, but if you're going to get in and grind and build a readership, then you're going to have to do a lot more today than you would have had to do in 85, 95 or the early 2000s.
Yeah, where you're telling your personal stories and how they created kind of the guidelines or the path of what this story is about. And I think that may be one thing that really separates you from most other authors, is that you're really able to draw upon your real life experiences and inject those into your storylines, and then follow that up with being able to convey that message of this was the inspiration, et cetera, and getting out in front of people and telling that story. And then they're like, okay, this is going to be a very close to reality experience in my mind as I read this. And I think that's a big differentiator.
Yeah, just on the writing side of the house, I think that is something, and it's not something I thought about before I started. I went all the books so thus far. I followed the same process, and it works for me. I'll change it if I can get more effective and efficient with another way, but at some point. But how I started out was really the way that I've done it the whole time, and that's I come up with a title because I don't want to be worried about a title, even if it's going to change. I don't want any bandwidth as I'm typing away taken up by, I need to think of a good title. So I have a title, I have a theme, something a one word, one sentence theme, like Revenge Without Constraint for the first one, story of violent redemption for the second one. So I have these themes that guide the writing process that I actually put on a little yellow sticky like one of these and put it on the side of my writing computer, which is only for writing. This is my business one, but I have another one where I only write. So it's I'm not getting any other distractions. So I have that theme that guides. I write a one-page executive summary, and I read that and I say, is this worth the next year and a half of my life? And if I say yes, then I read it again and say, if someone was to read this from like the back of a book, or they're to open the jacket on the book as they're going through Hudson News and read what it's about right here, would they think this is interesting enough for me to buy this book and spend time in its pages, time that I'm never going to get back? And if the answer is yes, or probably, then that's my story. And I take that one-page executive summary, turn it into the outline, and then I start writing the narrative. And so the first one, I did that, and then I started to write. And up until that point, I thought, okay, I'll get the sniper weapon stuff right. I'll get the tactics right for kind of ground special operations type things. If I don't know something about a helicopter or a submarine, I'll at least know who to call to ask about sorts of things. But I didn't think it was going to be such a personal writing experience. And then as soon as I started turning that outline into the draft, into the narrative, then I realized, oh, wow, this is going to be very personal, because now let's say my character gets ambushed in a completely fictional narrative in Los Angeles, California, as part of the story. Well, I can go back and think about what it was like to be ambushed in Baghdad in 2006, and I can take those feelings and emotions and then apply them to this totally fictional narrative. So even if someone doesn't know that, as they're reading through, I think the feelings come through as being true and authentic and real, and they just know that inherently, because they come right from my heart and soul into the page. And I don't have to, let's say, if I didn't have those experiences and I was an author, I'd have to go find someone that got ambushed in Iraq or Afghanistan. I have to sit down with them. I'd have to ask them my questions. I'd have to have their answers go through different filters of preconceived notions I might have, movies that I've seen, documentaries, books that I've read, and then I have to take that and then turn it around and put it back onto the page. So it's gone through all these filters and then comes back out onto the page, which is different than just going directly from my heart and soul right into that page. So don't have to track down what it was like to be a sniper. Don't have to track down to what it felt like to enter a war zone and then come home from that as well, from that experience. So I can work all those things into completely fictional narratives, and I think it rings true. So I think that stood out. And I think the other thing that stood out is that, and this wasn't intentional, it just was how I wrote, is that my character's on a journey, meaning he's not the same guy that saves the world from nuclear disaster here and then from a bioweapon thing here and here. No, he's evolving throughout the course of these different books, and he's taking lessons that he's learned in previous books and applying them to a current problem set as wisdom. So that's one thing that we all have in common. Every single person on this planet has in common, is that we're all on a journey. So no matter where you're born, what your station in life is, it doesn't matter. You're still on a journey, as is my character. So I think that's also really something that's made him stand out. So those two things, I think, have been pivotal in growing the readership.
Well, very cool. Well, and you're thank you for sharing that. I think that those are great insights, and you also touched on something that I did want to ask you about, because I think that our listeners would love to hear. As a kind of serial creator, which I'd consider myself. And I don't talk about it that much even on the podcast, but I love creating things and not knowing if they're going to work out, right? So, but I think people never understand how many things you put out there into the world, right? And just into the universe. You have these ideas and thoughts and whatever else. How many of those projects do you start versus how many of them do you complete? And that's not just as far as being an author, but just in life. I mean, if you have a percentage on that, because I'm going to say that I'm probably running at 70% of my projects don't ever see the light of day, but the 30 that do, I feel really good about, and that's where I drive. That's where I drive into them. So and it could be a project, a small home construction project, or it could be what you think is your next big book. I mean, so like
home construction projects. I'll tell you what, I'm not. Yeah, not that. I'm never finishing any of those. So I
just think that people nowadays, like this younger generation, thinks that when they start something, they've got to finish it. It's like, no, cut your losses if you don't see a benefit to it. Get rid of it. Get it out of your mind. Get it out of your life. And so I think people should hear, kind of like from another person's perspective, how many things get started and don't ever come to the light of day.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So I'll tell you, it's morphed over time, meaning I haven't started a book that I haven't finished yet.
Okay.
So that has not happened. But I have, let's say, another project in Hollywood and getting pitched to multiple outside of my James Reese Terminal List type of universe. And so that's getting pitched, and it might not get picked up. In that case, it's going to go into the category of, well, I'm going to try to grab it back and turn it into a book, into either a standalone or a new series. So I will try to do that. I'll say I have to have the agents work through that. But yeah, it's getting pitched to all the major streamers right now. I think we have 2 more to go. So I think we've done about 10 of them so far. And we'll see. And that's with the agents you jump on with the people at your studio that you're working with, who's kind of like the mid-level studio that then sells it to like a Netflix or an Amazon or something else, and then gets their buy-in and their infusion of capital, and then you just put a writer's room together and start building this thing out. Have a showrunner that directs the whole thing. So it's at that stage, but it might not come to fruition, and then it's going to go in that pile of things that a lot of work went into, but didn't see the light of day. But I'm going to try to turn that into a positive by turning it then into a novel, so that all that time, energy, and effort, although it didn't work out, let's say on the Hollywood front, I know it's a great story because I wrote it out as a story, as a book, and then decided to experiment on the Hollywood front, and see if I could turn this thing into a show instead, while I was focused on writing the next novel. So there are things like that might not see the light of day. But I have a strategic,
even from an executive summary perspective, when you've seen every single one of those through to a book?
All of the ones, well, no, because I put my first one, I wrote down, let's say 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe different executive summaries. And I thought, okay, I have all these ideas. Which one do I start with? And I wanted to start with Savage Son, which is my 3rd novel, but I knew the characters weren't evolved enough to explore the theme of Savage Son, which is the dark side of man through the dynamic of hunter and hunted. And so I thought it was very clear that I needed to start with the terminal list. I needed to start out of the gate with something primal and visceral and fairly A to Z basic kind of a thing. And then I got to the end of that book and realized, okay, they're not yet ready for Savage Son. True believer. I need to take this character on a journey of violent redemption. It would be disingenuous to the readers to just pick him up after the traumatic events of the terminal list and then drop him into a new adventure. No, he has to learn to heal. He has to learn to live again. He has to find his next mission in life, which he does in Mozambique and Africa, taking the skills from Iraq and Afghanistan and applying them to a poaching problem there. And then that's when the CIA comes in and pulls him back into the fold because of a relationship that he had with an Iraqi back during the war. So that was all. Long way of saying that Savage Son was the one that I wanted to start with. So there's still those other ones out there, and some of those I turned into the next books. Devil's Hand was one of those, and I think that's probably In the Blood was one, but then I've started to the story has taken over, and it's been much more natural in building it out from there because of how much work goes into developing these storylines and then naturally lead to the next book and the next theme and the next evolution of the story. So, but Savage Son I wanted to write back in 6th grade, back when I read The Most Dangerous Game, which is a short story by Richard Connell written in the early 1920s. And I told myself that one day I would write a novel that paid tribute to that short story. And that's why Savage Son was the one that I really wanted to start with, because I also at the time thought maybe I only get, like I said, 2 books. Maybe I only do 2 books because I'm for sure doing one. And I thought of the John Grisham story where he wrote A Time to Kill first, and then he couldn't give that book away. And then he writes The Firm. And that's optioned before it even hits shelves. Tom Cruise stars in the film, obviously international bestseller. Then they go back and republish A Time to Kill, which I think is one of John Grisham's best works. And so then we have a John Grisham novel or 2 every year since. And he has a movie almost every other year during the 90s and just absolutely crushes. But if he, after that first novel, had said, hey, I can't give this thing away, I'm just going to go back to practicing law, then he'd probably be just now retiring from a job that he hates. But instead, he's had this wonderful life as an author and brought joy of reading to millions of people. So from that story, I thought, okay, I'm going to do a second one. If the second one doesn't work out, then I'll reevaluate my choices and maybe have to pivot here. But it was always going to be 2, and luckily the first one worked, second one worked, and then went to Savage Son, and that worked too, and keep writing today.
Right.
I also think it's wonderful. I mean, just looking at your life alone, I think is very cinematic to me and just inspiring. When I go back, a big thing that kept coming up when I was seeing this was just manifestation. I feel like, we're starting and we're either talking about, being inspired for, being a Navy SEAL commander, if that was, and correct me if I'm wrong, seeing The Frogmen when you were 7 years old, right? Yeah. Or if it was reading some of these all these authors that, inspired you, like Tom Clancy. And then I just think it's so beautiful how it was combined. But when it came, I guess what I was interested in when it came time to know that you were going to enlist and kind of start this military journey, were you already thinking like, okay, this is going to be the experiences I'm going to be using for later in writing? Or, because it all seemed to kind of play out, I must say, like beautifully inspiring. So I just want to know how that started.
Thank you. Yeah, I did not look at them as one leading into the other. I looked at them as two distinctly different professions, all the way up until I started writing that first book and realized that, okay, there's going to be a lot of personal experience that goes into this. And not only am I using that personal experience, those feelings and emotions behind these events downrange, but I'm also using the academic study of warfare that I have continued throughout my whole life. That's factoring into these books. So I have this academic background of just reading on my own, trying to professionally develop myself to make the best decisions downrange that I possibly could for those that I'm taking downrange to Iraq and Afghanistan and other places. So I owe it to them to be the best leader, the best operator I can possibly be. And reading is a big part of that. Understanding my enemy is a big part of that. So I had that reading background. Then I had the reading on the fiction side of the house also. And I was just enjoying all those books growing up just for the pure joy of reading and the stories and the characters in those pages. So whether it's Tom Clancy or Nelson DeMille or David Morrell, who created Rambo back in 1972 with First Blood, as a great trilogy in the 80s that starts with the Brotherhood of the Rose. That's just incredible. They did an NBC miniseries on it back in the 80s as well. It's so good. Robert Mitchum's in it. AJ Quinnell, J.C. Pollock, Mark Olden, Louis L'Amour, all these guys that I read growing up, Clive Cussler. They were really my professors in the art of storytelling, but I didn't realize it at the time. I was just reading because I loved reading. And I'm seeing #1 New York Times bestseller on the top of all those at the time, mostly paperbacks that I'm reading. And so in my mind as a kid, as a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, certainly by 11, I was reading those same kind of books. 10 was kind of when I moved from the young adult type fiction, like the Farley Mowat type books, into the same kind of books that were on my parents' shelves. That's when I started reading all those books that said #1 New York Times bestseller. And in my mind, I'm just thinking, well, that will be me one day. I'm going to write these kind of books. But I didn't think, oh, if I'm going to write these kind of books, I need to study how these guys are doing that. It wasn't that at all. It was more just, I'm just loving reading. I'm going to write after my time in the military. I'm going to be a SEAL first. Everything that I'm doing is preparing me not to write, but to be a SEAL. And I didn't want to be that person that I was reading about, watching in movies and television shows, that was always like sitting on the couch thinking back to his time in Vietnam, and now he's a police officer, private investigator, whatever he's doing in these 80s TV shows and movies, but thinking about something he could have done differently in Vietnam. And so for myself, I was always like, hey, I want to put all this time, energy, and effort into training, into trying to prepare myself so that I know there's nothing else I could have done, even if something goes south downrange. I don't want to be that person sitting next to the bottle on the couch that I'm seeing portrayed in all these 80s television shows and movies.
Thank you.
So well, it was all in on that sort of thing. And so that reading I did prepared me to write, although I didn't realize it at the time. All the academic study of warfare prepared me to write. All the experiences now as a SEAL also prepared me, and they all came together at the right time and place as I was getting out of the military, and really lent themselves to these stories. And I don't think I could have prepared myself in a better way if I had tried to. And even if I tried to, I probably would have messed it up, because this is all very natural. I was naturally drawn to reading. I was naturally drawn to studying warfare. I was naturally drawn to the SEAL teams to serve, to test myself, as a lot of young men are, I think. And then all those things just very naturally came together and are part of this foundation from which I now build.
Have your kids carried on the gift of literature?
Oh my goodness, this question. Yeah, I read that every single night when they were young, in the cribs. Yeah. And then they could sit into bed next to me. I'd read all the stories. I surrounded them with books, and it has not worked out that way. Once again, we're up against, I think, these huge companies that are so powerful that
addictive, as you said earlier. Yeah, I totally agree. It's funny. I was just thinking about, kind of your, talking about your kind of like pre-10-year-old reading, and what I saw even in my kids, what appealed to them, because we went through books and whatever else, and every night it was the same thing, reading to them, having them read, and so on and so forth. But the one series of books that really resonated with them was a series called How I Survived. And I don't know if
Oh
you
yeah,
ever. They're
yeah.
great for like that 8 to 12, 14-year-old, and they take these historical events and they put it in this perspective of like as if I was a child living through 9/11, which was a great one. And
Yep.
because they didn't get to live those events, right? Like I lived through those, I knew how those felt, and so these books really carried this the elements, the emotions, the actions, and how these stories kind of evolved and what was done from that kid's perspective, and so they got really tied into those. And so now I've got, and thank you for your service, by the way. I've got my eldest daughter is a Marine, and then my eldest son is in the Navy. He's in boot camp right now, but he wanted to upstage his sister, and so he's like, "Well, what's better than a Marine?" He's like, "A Navy SEAL." And so we'll see if he goes down that route. He's a very smart kid, very motivated, and he very well may be a Navy SEAL in the next couple of years. I know it's not an easy or quick path to get there, and it's only the best of the best. And so I would love to hear your story about going from teenage years into what drove you to the Navy, or just the armed forces, but then your desire to get into the most elite military organization out there.
Yeah. Well, first off, because I don't want to forget this, what helped me through buds, I think, is reading, meaning everything that I'd read up to that point in my life, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, being on the beach in Coronado, California, like first night of Hell Week, people are quitting in droves. That's where you get most of your 80% attrition. And I thought, you know what I'm not doing right now? I am not storming the beaches at Normandy or Iwo Jima. I am on a beach in Coronado, California. Those guys who did that, they sacrificed so much so I could pursue my dream of being here, being tested, doing push-ups and sit-ups, and being in the surf zone for search torture, which I think they now call surf conditioning. But they allowed me to do that. Like their sacrifice allowed me to do that. I'm like, I can do a couple more push-ups here. I can stay cold for a few more hours. I can make it through this week if those guys could do that for me.
Yeah.
And so things in relative terms, I think really helped me because, but I was only able to do that because I knew those stories. I'd spent so many, I guess, years of my life in the pages of books, both fiction and non-historical fiction, reading like Winds of War, War and Remembrance, two of my favorite books, Herman Wouk. And you get really a history lesson through the eyes of characters who are made up, but that humanizes this experience in a way that just reading about the numbers or the battles doesn't really do. You experience this, in this case, World War II and Winds of War, the lead up to World War II, through the eyes of a family, multi-generational. So you're seeing how parents experience it, how their children are experiencing it, how their loved ones are experiencing it, as you're getting this history lesson at the same time.
Yeah.
So it really humanizes the whole thing. So I think that's the power of historical fiction, just like Winds of War and War and Remembrance. But point being, for your son, I think reading and thinking about things in relative terms as he goes through this program that 80% of people are gonna quit along the way, give or take. That putting things in relative terms can be quite useful and helpful.
Great advice.
Yeah, and it's going to be for any. It's not just for buds; it's your life in general as well. I think putting things in relative terms, and of course realizing that you're not going to get handed anything you can't handle.
Yeah, and everything will be okay.
Yeah.
I think that's an important one. That's an important one.
I've also heard you mention too with great advice that you can really climb the ranks in the military with a couple of simple things, and some of that was kind of like a clean criminal record, and certain things like that. Which I think, if you want to touch more on that, because I think it's still like inspiring about that you can climb these ranks with just a few tips of things to live by or keep in mind.
Yeah, well, actually, I think I say that in kind of in a different context, meaning. Meaning, it's not. I'm not saying those things in a way that is complimentary to the organization or the bureaucracy, and it's really meaning that, hey, some of these leaders who stay in and climb the ranks, unfortunately, become politicians in uniform and can climb the ranks if they do a few basic things like not get too many DUIs, not positive on a piss test, not get arrested for domestic violence. Like, if you do that, you can probably rise to the top of the military hierarchy. And that's not a compliment. It's more of a critique, meaning that there needs to be other ways to evaluate leaders, especially today, when you have some of these technological, and maybe they're doing it now. I have no idea. I'm almost a decade removed from my time in the military. Thank goodness. It was a good 20-year run, but I'm glad to be looking at it from the outside in now and solving problems on the pages of novels rather than on the battlefield. It was like I said, it was a good 20-year run, but it's over now, and I'm moving on to the next chapter. But instead of just being able to rise through the ranks because of you don't do certain things, how about evaluating people on what they do? Meaning you're not just getting evaluated from the top down in this pyramid like the military has been for a long time. And like I said, maybe this might have changed. Like I said, I'm very dated, but it used to be very hierarchical, meaning what your person above thought of you, that would lead to your next assignment or your evaluation or fit rep or whatever they're called. And that was the most important, when really what should be most important is what those under you think of you and your leadership, and even your peers think of you. Much more important than what that person above you thinks, who gets one sort of view of you that is probably not the most advantageous view when it comes to evaluating someone holistically and deciding who's going to rise to the ranks of this organization to potentially maybe lead it one day. So that's
it actually, I think that's a great way to describe it. It sounds, just from talking to my kids, it sounds like it still does that. It does have that hierarchical sort of what your immediate superior thinks of you is very much kind of going to drive the trajectory of what your career in the military is. So it sounds like that is still there from what I've heard.
Yeah, I mean, it's a gigantic bureaucracy. But the way I think I was in my DNA just to serve anyway. But my grandfather was killed in World War II. He was a Marine Corsair pilot, which are the planes that have the gull wings that would fold up and on aircraft carriers. And he was killed off Okinawa in 1945. And I had the maps that they gave aviators back then, which were silk, because we had a paper map. When you hit the water, they would just kind of disintegrate. But silk maps obviously still work because they just get wet. Had his wings, his medals, had pictures of him and his squadron. So I had all those tangible items, but I didn't know anybody, neither did my father, who knew his father, my grandfather, because it was obviously way before Facebook. And if you didn't have a personal connection to someone in that squadron, then you just didn't know. You didn't have anyone to talk to about who your father was. So through the power, I think, of popular culture, the connection to that generation for a lot of us and for a lot of my father's generation was Hollywood, were films, were television shows, were books about World War II. And so I think that's how he got to know that generation. And same thing with me growing up in the 80s. There was a great TV show called Black Sheep Squadron. I think it came out in the late 70s. Baba Black Sheep, then it gets syndicated as Black Sheep Squadron, and it's based on, fictionalized a bit, of course, on Pappy Boynton, who was a Marine Corps Medal of Honor recipient in World War II, who also flew the Corsair with those gull wings, and so we watched that together in the early 80s growing up, but I knew I would join the military even before age 7, and then I saw that movie, The Frogman, and my path was set. Went down to the local library with my mom, found the end of the internet when it comes to SEAL teams and special operations, because you could back then. It's just the end of the bookshelf. And I remember the takeaway was that the training was some of the toughest ever devised by a modern military. And these were some of our most elite special operations forces. And so they had me from age 7 onward. And so I always just kept my focus on doing that. And went in 1996, went to boot camp, did a little A school, which you had to do back then, even if you were already accepted to BUDS, which I was, because they know that 80% are going to fail out. So they wanted you to get a specialty first, then go to BUDS, fail out, and then go to the fleet. I think that was how they thought of things. Now they do it a little differently. You have a rating from the get-go, so they know you're going into the SEAL teams. You go to boot camp, you do something that preps you for boot camp afterward, and then you go into BUDS, into SEAL training. And we still have 80% attrition. All that help didn't really change the numbers from what I understand. We have fitter quitters, we call them, meaning they're just in better shape, but they still quit in droves. So
fitter quitters.
Fitter quitters, I can imagine that. Yeah.
bell right there. You just ring that bell, make it very easy to self-select out of this program. And
Yeah.
it's right in front of the first phase classroom all through training, except for Hell Week, when they put it in the trailer hitch to the vehicle that's following you around. So you always have essentially a line of sight to this thing. That's your ticket out to warmth and sleep. So it's it's an interesting program. So I got to my first SEAL team in 97 and then got out in 2016 and knew that I was gonna write. So I'd started writing my last, let's say, year and a half in the military after I dropped my papers, or maybe right before I dropped my papers, but I knew that I was going to get out. And then when you do that, when you drop your papers and let them know, then you go in a different pile, and then you have to get out of this gigantic bureaucracy, which is it's itself a challenge. You have to go to medical, dental, transition assistance programs, I think it was called, get read out of secret programs, turn in gear, but essentially you're not moving on with the organization, so you have a little more time, and you have to, back then anyway, had to walk to all these places and make your appointment and then go to follow-ups. So it wasn't very efficient. So you're just kind of doing that, which that gave me a lot of time to write. So that's when I started working on the first novel and had it done when I got out and sent it to Simon & Schuster a couple months after I got out of the military. And I was already working on the second book, already flew to Africa and spent time in Mozambique. So I knew that was gonna be an important part of the second book. So I was already prepping and working on that one even before I had a publishing deal. So got it to Simon & Schuster, the exact person that I wanted, and found her name in the back of Vince Flynn's books. Emily Bessler's her name, and he thanks her in the back of all his books. And so I thought Emily Bessler will be my publisher and editor. So I got it to her, and she's my publisher and editor to this day.
So one thing that struck me about your transition from what I've read is from the military into civilian life and into a new career was that you really set up some guardrails. You already had some North Stars, that there was no-go zones, and that's something that I also think that I want more people to think about in their own lives, right? It's so you got to set a standard for what you're willing to do to live your life out how you want to live it, and people just get into this 9 to 5 and this standard sort of rigmarole of society and what's expected, and it's boring, and you're really not contributing all to yourself or society that you could. So what were those North Stars that you put in place to move forward into a whole new phase of your life?
Is this really the end? Unbelievable. Find out next week.